Conversations, yeah. You ain't ready for these conversations, yeah. Have some faith when we conversating. Whoa. Connecting when we conversating. Holding conversations, yeah. I'm having conversations. I'm having conversations. I'm having conversations of faith.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Conversations of Faith with friends and family. Thank you so much. Right now, before anything else, if you haven't already, click the like button, hit the subscribe button, set the notification bell, and leave a comment, man. Say something about today's episode. I know you're really going to like this because we've got a guest, as you can see. Christopher Life Willars and his lovely wife, April, are here today. They're going to be talking to us about the project, the passion that's in Chris's heart. Chris has got an incredible testimony. So without further ado, I'm gonna get into it. As I said, Chris and April are here. Chris, I'm gonna say just a little bit, but I want you to tell us the depth of what the Life Unit is about, because that's a foundation or a program that you have established. It deals with I won't say rehabilitation, but you spent some time in prison. Now you're out, thank God, and that had such an impact on you that you decided we need to talk about this, what this does to people, the impact that it had on your life and on lives, and just not the person who is gone into prison, but the lives of the family members are also impacted by that. So introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about the Life Unit.
Yeah, my name's Christopher Life Willars, and I'm not even supposed to be here right now. That's literally how I start off. Any opportunity I'm given to speak, any opportunity now that I'm able to give an interview, because that's the reality of the situation. Before I can speak about Life Unit, I got to speak about what I've been through, and you kind of touched on it. But in 2003, I was sentenced to 144 years in prison.
Dang.
Oh.
So, without that happening, though, and that's probably the message that I carry with me, I wouldn't be where I'm. So, yeah, we're gonna get into that. I'm glad to be here. Definitely want to get into Life Unit. My organization, I always say I got to shout out my team. My team's smarter than me. They got better vision than me. You know, they know what needs to be done. So it's kind of on autopilot, but we save lives, and we're not really an organization. We're a ministry.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
That's the truth behind it all. We're going to actively be a church in 2026.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, so all of this is ministry. We're in the streets, and the prisons don't take a day off. The graveyards don't.
Right.
So when I leave here, I won't be off.
Yeah.
Even though it's Sunday, my phone's still on call. The team's still working, and we're trying to keep people from going to the graves, man.
Man, that's biblical too, man. That's what we're supposed to do. Is I feel like that's more often than not, a forgotten part of society, right? Is once people go away, life continues, and it's sad to say, and I'm sure you can attest more than I can just assume, is that you find out who's really there for you when you receive a death sentence, right?
They gave me.
I mean, that's crazy. But let's go back to the beginning.
We're gonna get into it, because the question is it crazy? But the beginning.
Young Chris.
The only abnormal thing about my childhood, I was adopted as a baby, though, as an infant. Shout out to my beautiful wife over here, who's also runs the Life Unit. My organization just makes me look good. But she did find my biological parents when I was 36. So just wanted to include that in the story. But outside of that, I had good parents. I was raised in a multicultural or bicultural household. Mother African American, father Mexican American. I grew up around my father's side of the family, so my uncles and cousins, and culturally, that's how I was raised in a suburb off of Chicago. You
Oh,
know,
wow.
yeah, and diverse. My mother, she's still with me, rocking and rolling, but she was the type of mother that taught me the big words first. You
Mm,
know, I don't know. I just had that type, to show me, and inadvertently, she kind of was teaching me to do things opposite of what the world was. I think back then, I just wasn't paying attention. I was still a kid. Um, but growing up, sometimes things happen. My parents, they didn't work out. They ended up, mutually deciding to part ways. And from there, like a lot of kids, things got impacted financially with my father being out the household, my mother working 2 jobs, and my father moving back to Texas. Um, and I'm growing,
mhm.
right? So if you're a parent of a young child and you're working really hard and maybe you're not as present as you can be, just ask yourself right now, what is your child doing? What is your young, your teenager doing, etc. And it's not to knock you, it's just to
Right.
say
Mhm.
that if you're not present, someone else may be.
Mm,
Mm.
And that's kind of what happened with me. I had an explorative mind, and mom's at work. I'm in the city. I'm running with the friends. We're joyriding. We're getting introduced to the streets.
yeah.
But even then, I was not one of these people that was running around getting in trouble. I'm not somebody that says I should have went to prison because I had chances. Um, the most serious I would get into trouble prior to the 144-year sentence was I was known to fight. I was just, I don't know, grew up. I was light skinned. I realized that they hit me. Win or lose, I better fight. I'm gonna get lumped up anyways. So, um, and I got kicked out of high school because of fighting, and got sent to the shock treatment program, Lincoln Challenge program, ran by the Army National Guard,
Mm,
and it actually, even though I took the path that I did, helped save my life because a lot of the structure I'm implementing now was learned in that, you know.
yeah.
Um, and from there, at 17, I enlisted in the United States Air Force.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I say I was definitely not supposed to go to prison, I was supposed to. I had opportunity. I was supposed to be police. I was supposed to be law enforcement. I was literally, but last second, career path changed in the military, went into mechanics, blah blah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, tell me about Chicago, because I didn't really know that Chicago was considered like a tough area. I grew up in very rural
hmm
Georgia, and
hmm
then my first experience with Chicago was when I joined the Navy and I was in Great Lakes, and I remember a guy telling me about Chicago and the vice lords and things like that. And in my
Yeah.
mind, I didn't really. But then as time went on, I realized Chicago is a very rough. What is it like? I would say Chicago and Baltimore probably, and I
Los
mean I'm sure Los
Angeles,
Angeles.
huge. Yeah.
Like there are some very unfortunate statistics regarding crime. So were you? Now I know you said you fought, but you were just out in the streets. It's not easy to. I mean, it's not hard to find yourself in a situation where you're either losing your life or you're just a victim of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Was it where you grew up? Was it like that?
Yeah. I guess the way I always answer that question is in my life, I never swung first for anything that happened. But up in Chicago, very, very rough, very violent. In my era, consistently murder capital of the world, or murder capital at least the country statistically, which is absurd because it's a big city, right?
Mhm.
Um, Politics are heavy. As much as I grew up in a multicultural, multilingual neighborhood, it's still very segregated. Law enforcement out there's at times still very racist. Certain things that have plagued our city for the longest that document. And growing up in that environment, I lost my first friend in first grade. Um, we were in first grade. He got hit by a stray. And
Mhm.
that was I guess that was the initiation into trauma, and this is what the world is. So, growing up in Chicago, losing your first friend in first grade, and they sit you down on the carpet and they say, "Yo, Mario's not gonna be here no more. But if you want to go talk to somebody, and you don't know what,
Right.
Right.
you know. So from there it just escalated. So even though I wasn't in the midst a lot of times of the worst, I couldn't escape it.
Right.
As we progressed, we started off in a house, parents split up, ended up in a townhouse, in an apartment in Gunderson Ave. And it just was what it was, man. The environment is a reflection of what a lot of cities and urban environments are, not designed to thrive, not for a person, especially my complexion.
So 17, you enlist in the Air Force?
Yeah.
Is that right?
17, yeah.
What made you decide? Was it, I'm just going to leave this behind? Like that's a decision that I know I've tried to convince young people, join the military.
Mhm.
If you don't know what you're doing, and you don't have any idea of what you want, just go join the military, and they'll at least, you mentioned that program that you were in,
Mhm.
creating structure in your life, and that's
Yeah.
what the military did for me. I was, headed who knows where, but
Mhm.
the military really put me in a position to say, okay, at least I have this, and now I know how to close my mouth and listen, and to pay attention when somebody's talking. So when you made that decision, was it, I got to get out of here, or was it something like, I want to do this with my life?
I come from a military family.
Okay.
My uncles, my father, even to this day, my nephews. So I think culturally or subconsciously, I was already, that's what we're taught in my family. Sign up, go enlist if you're a man in our family. So that part, for me, I didn't want to go.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah,
I burned my selective services card when they sent it. I was like, oh, forget this.
Yeah,
There's no way
yeah.
I'm doing this.
But I'm not knocking that.
Mhm.
I was in the military at the same time. I seen it as an opportunity though. I was speaking to a Marine recruiter that walked up to me. He started telling me about, da da da, you can see the world, and then the Air Force recruiter up. He said, "Hey man," because we all had to take the ASVAB. He's like, "You scored the highest out your class. You should probably come over here with us so you don't get shot at." I said, he's like,
Say
"And
less.
Yeah, he's like, "And the food's good." So I'm like, all right, I can get out the city, go to the military, and stay out the way, and hopefully figure out life. But at the same time, I was still 17.
Sure.
So that was tough going out into the world now. At 17, living by myself on base after getting through basic and tech school, and then
Yeah.
I wasn't ready.
Yeah. I've definitely, I've seen just the way you have, like, when you get out there, you're still a person, a young mind, and it's kind of like every man for himself. Thankfully for me, my brother was stationed in the same city that I was, so I got to live with him, and he tried his best to keep me on the right track. But yeah, when you get out there, just you're on your own trying to find your way. So
you're out there, man.
So what'd you do? What was your
MOS?
Yeah.
I was special and heavy equipment tech, so diesel.
Oh,
Yeah.
no kidding. I was a marine diesel
Yeah.
engine operator, so down in the power plants.
Yeah.
But no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, I think that was and I was supposed to be long. I was trying to be security forces, and 2 weeks before I went into basic, which kind of spoiled my experience with the military even more. I ended up getting a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt, and I was wearing my seatbelt.
Oh man.
But I was with an Italian girl at 6 a.m, Cicero, wrong part of the city. And the officer was Italian, and that left a taste in my mouth. And then I had to go into an open mechanics field, and I was passing the test, but I didn't, I wasn't happy, man.
They penalized you for getting that ticket. The Air Force did.
I had to get a waiver and go into a different MO.
Yeah, the Air Force is tough to get into, and it's like they want the like the best and the brightest.
Yeah,
that's hard to get into. So you got out, did your time, got out?
I had no, I didn't even make it through my time. I was still fighting.
Really?
I got one night got to fighting with a first sergeant on base. I got in trouble multiple ways that night trying to be a hero. I was staying at then my fiance's, her barracks. Not supposed to be over there overnight at the time. Blah. First sergeant got into a domestic with one of their guests, and she was screaming. And came out there. He had been drinking. I had been. By the time security forces got there, I was standing up. They called me down there, and a few days later, and stripped me and said you got about 30 days. Figure it out.
And separated.
Yeah, one incident, one and done.
How old were you then?
I was 19.
19.
Yeah, turned 19.
And I can't imagine that just being a gut punch. I mean, just if
I had a few.
Yeah.
I had a few when I look at my life. And as a young person, it's really, because I was really trying to do some things despite me not being satisfied in a situation. It was.
So you come home, you go back to Chicago?
No. My mother had ended up moving to the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Okay.
And that's where the rest of our.
Okay.
So she moves out there to the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I remember the first time, like, I got there, my grandmother literally tells me before I walk, we're staying with her. She's like, this isn't Chicago. This is South, baby.
I was going to say,
Yeah. She knew, like, out of her grandkids, I wasn't, like, quote unquote, I don't want to use that word, the worst one, but I was, like, the fast one. Like, I was the one, I was going to figure it out, get into it.
Mm-hmm.
She told me, and I ignored it. And maybe not at first, but now I'm bitter from my experience in the military. Mind you, while I was in the military, I was diagnosed with adjustment disorder, several things that are now PTSD, etc. Depressive mood disorder. So I've got some mental health stuff. Young, self-medicating, drinking. It's not a good combination for a young kid. And no support around, except for an older cousin that's got me about 10 years, and he's miserable. And I'll continue to tell part of the story to this day. But at the time, as a young person, this is my big cousin. I have nobody else to hang out with. He's cool. But to give you the background of the type of individual he was, as an adult, he worked at Hardee's and he watched mob movies. He talked about being in the streets when I know this now in hindsight. But again, back then, young person, I'm not from there, And, from there, he was always talking about we need to get into the streets, we need to make money. He's watching the movies, the mob, and we shared a room. And I always tell people, like, this was my first time in a prison cell. Like, this was my not when I went to prison. When I was sitting there on one twin size and my cousin was on a twin size across the way, and we got a little TV, and he's trying to tell me about a play he wants. This is the mentality of a lot of times that you see, not all the time. And over time, I was just impressionable, peer pressure. One night we were drinking. He had moved. He had got his own apartment. Had a couple of his friends over there, and we're drinking. It's like money. I got to pay rent. He's just running down the list, and he's like, "I just need you to take me and the guys up the street." And at first, I'm like, "I'm not taking. What you mean take you? What you guys? Like we're just gonna run in, run out." And I'm like, "What do you mean you're just gonna run in, run out?" You know what I'm saying? He's like, "Man, we're gonna go stick the place up." Immediately, I was like, "I'm not going for that."
Yeah.
I was never the type that really wanted to get into stuff like that. But his rebuttal in front of his homeboys was, "Well, the weapon's not real." And he pulled out a BB gun. And in my mind, as a 19-year-old that's not stable, that's drinking, justifying the moment, nobody's going to get killed. Nobody's going to get unalive. None of that. I said, "Yeah, I'll take y'all up the street." And I didn't even know where we were going. I just got in, maybe an hour later after everybody got ready. And it was an October night. It was cold. It was dark. And I was driving and praying. I could feel it. I knew I wasn't supposed to be going that way. I wanted to stop, call my grandmother, like any,
Wow.
like just, but peer pressure.
Yeah.
And that's why I say again, to the parents, man, peer pressure is real, especially with this generation right now. It's at an all-time high with social media and everything else. But next thing I know, he's saying turn left, turn right, and then park here. And that's it. Too late now. Once I parked and they got out the car, I know, from growing up in Chicago, I am now committed. Yeah. This is it. They were gone for maybe 2 minutes, but it felt like 2 hours. And by the time they came back, the door pops open. My cousin's dropping money on the floor. 2 of his homeboys that were with us, one of them yells out, I dropped the handkerchief or, the bandana that was on my face. I forgot how he had said it. And I'm driving with no headlights, almost hit a car. I swerve. I can still see the drive, as I'm telling you. I can still feel the drive. That's one of the things I talked about. But I remember as I was driving away and getting us up out of there, I was like, I'm on my way to prison. Like, I know it. Like, it's over with. My life is done. Got them back to his place, dropped them off, went to my grandmother's, and it was, it was late enough at night, but I was up the rest of the day, the rest of the night. A cricket chirped, the wind blew, anything. I was locked in. Like, I just knew the police were going to come, kick the door in. But it didn't happen. Didn't happen. Nothing happened. Nothing happened for a week. Nothing happened for 2 weeks. And then, I don't necessarily like the word, but to illustrate the point, karma happened, or what's done in the dark comes to the light, whatever it is. And what happened was my cousin, who allowed one of his homeboys, one of the same gentlemen that was with us that night, to stay at his apartment. He had just had a child. His child's mother stayed there as well. And the baby was crying one day. Loud music was playing in the apartment. 2 concerned neighbors, rightfully so, were walking by, loading groceries in their apartment. They smelled smoke. They heard the music, heard a baby crying, made a call. Made a call to the police department. Police department came, and from what he told me after the fact, he opened the door immediately because he thought it was me. I was supposed to be headed that way, but he didn't know I was still at work. And when he opened the door, it was the police. They smelt the smoke, made the call, gave him a reason to enter. They searched, and baby was fine, all that, but they found a blue money bag. Yeah. He said, that's how I felt. When my cousin called me.
Why did you get...
Right. No, for real.
What are you thinking?
Hey, listen, I'm not a criminal, but I now have a doctorate in criminology because I've been in an environment. And to this day, when people ask me, I can't answer you why he kept that bag or anybody did. I just know that they found it, and I should have never been in that situation. They didn't make any arrests that day, but everybody ran. They took it up out of there, tagged it. Everybody ran. They got 2 of the co-defendants down there in Florida. They were loitering. They didn't have a plan. They got caught sleeping outside of a Walmart, just trying to run. Ended up doing some other stuff on the way down there, trying to survive. And my cousin, in the midst of it, went MIA. So I knew they disappeared, and it was just me and him. I didn't know exactly what happened to our other 2 co-defendants. And my cousin's telling me everything's okay. And I'm trying to make up reasons to believe that everything's okay. But it wasn't. And probably like 3 or 4 days later, he disappeared. And his apartment, I went to his apartment one day. His apartment door was wide open. Nothing was touched. And now it's just me. And I got to keep reminding everybody, I'm 19. Christmas Eve, probably about 3 weeks after that, 2, and I got to say it like this because my grandma, rest in peace, good heart, she was. And it was what it was. My grandmother dealt with some stuff in the Old South, and white people didn't come to her house. I'm just saying. And I see these 2 white guys walking up in suits. It's Christmas Eve. I'm like, okay, maybe it's like Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't know what's going on. And I go to open the door, and right when I open the door, he holds up a picture, and it's my cousin hogtied. He had went to go try to rob a Chinese restaurant, and they beat him, and they tied him with the cord. And when the police got there, they took pictures. And for Christmas Eve, that's what he showed me. He said, "Merry Christmas." He said, "Enjoy your last one out here." He said, "Because we're coming. That we already got your cousin and the other two." He looked at me. I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "Yeah, you do." He said, "Make sure when you run, you go somewhere warm so we could take a vacation." And then they walked off. Yeah, they walked off. And my grandmother came out the kitchen. "Who was that, baby? Who was that?" "Nobody. There wasn't nobody, Grandma." So now I'm just sitting there through the holidays, and I know. And then it got quiet again. Not quiet enough. I would see the detectives and, driving down the street. But it wasn't until February 12th, that's when everything. And working at Walmart, changing tires, mom's manager up there, driving her home. I'm off, sunny day. I'm still in my mind trying to, maybe I got by, maybe it's okay. And I pulled up to my grandmother's house, and my grandmother was just like, "What did you do?" Like, the detectives were here, the police were here, they were looking for you. And I just looked at my mother and I said, "You got to take me to." And countdown was officially started. It was the way. Yeah. So that would be the beginning of my last moments of freedom for 16 years, 11 months.
I was gonna say, if you want to pull that mic to you a little bit, I don't know if it's on. Feel free to
No
adjust that.
problem.
Anyway,
Yeah, I didn't want to just.
You're good, man.
Cool.
Feel free. Wow, that's. And had you known your cousin before? Feel free to take that sip of coffee, but
My fault.
no. Just I know, like you said, at 19, you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to just. The rug's been pulled from under you, so you get there. I can see how you might find yourself agreeing to something like that. But had you met this particular cousin before, or was that like your first time really?
My first time really. I had always heard about him. Like my mom and his dad were close, but I always lived out of state.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I used to come out here or come out of Virginia, one of my aunts used to take me straight to Maryland. I was her favorite nephew. So I'd be around the family, but I wasn't around the family. So but this was our first time really every day, kicking it, chopping it up. Yeah. Yeah.
So you go basically turn yourself in. You said, "Take me up there." Did you get tired of the constant anxiety of when's the other shoe gonna drop?
Yeah. Well, my brothers make a joke, but they say I've never been the type to run from nothing. And where was I gonna go?
Right.
Like, that's what I knew. Like, even with my cousin went down, I was like, where am I going? I'm 19. I don't have no money like that. I'm not here to. Some guys, they tell lies. The majority of people get locked up. They don't have money for a lawyer. And I wasn't going to run. I was just waiting to address it. And went to the police station because I was tired. I remember immediately that night that I was speaking about, just listening to the wind. And that's how every night was after that. So walked up to the desk, say, "My name's Chris Willars. I think you guys are looking for me." The detectives came out smiling and whistling, and yeah.
And so, why 144? Was it the weapon?
It's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I love speaking about this part because young people need to know. I work intervention right now, and I work inside the prisons, outside the prison, like the nasty stuff, right? So to any of my young people out there that's sticking things up or whatever, please stop. But at least know the laws.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody walks in here and robs this place, they don't get one robbery charge. They get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's what happened to me. So in Virginia, there's no accessory charge. I never went into the place. I never even touched the BB gun. But there's no accessory charge. So for each individual that was in that establishment, I received, just as they did, 1 robbery charge. Each one carried 5 to life. I got a gun charge for each individual that was in the building. The first one was mandatory 3. Each one after that was 5. So that's 28 years. And 6 life sentences I was facing already. And then 6 conspiracy charges were 10 years. So 6 life sentences, 28 mandatory, 10 times 6, 60 more. Yeah. I was given an opportunity to go home the very first night. The very first night.
Of
The very first night I turned myself in.
really?
I was giving myself I was given the opportunity to walk out of there and cooperate and be done with it. When I turned myself in, even though the detectives were smirking, when they finally got me into the interrogation room, immediately the detective said, "We know you're the youngest. You're a good kid. You were in the military. Let us help you out. You can go home." He said, "What time's your mother cook dinner?" I answered, I was like, probably like 5 or 6. He's like, "You can go home right now and be there for dinner. Wouldn't that do your mother, He's like, "All you got to do is sign this paper and show up in the courtroom and make sure we get your cousin and everybody else." And this time in particular, 2003, that's when no snitch culture. They were wearing the stop snitching. It was definitely prevalent in the streets. Side note, it's not prevalent in the streets. Everybody's telling even your favorite big homie. But anyway, things have changed. But yeah, I looked at him and I said, "I can't do that. I don't know what you're talking about." And he looked at me, said, "Kid," said, "you got an opportunity to go home. Don't do this." And I looked at him the second time and I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And as he got up, the other detective looked at me and said, "Just know that I'm going to be the reason that you end up never going home again." So because I turned that down, not only, here's something weird that I think needs to be discussed more about my case, even though I don't always discuss my case for certain reasons, because I'm not trying to glamorize or highlight, but because I didn't cooperate with the detectives, I wasn't even given a plea. And that's virtually unheard of. I've never ran into anybody else. I'm in active advocacy. I work with people that got active. I've never met anybody else that did not receive a plea agreement, the offer of one. So I had to sit in that jail facing all that time waiting to go in front of a judge and plead guilty or go in front of a jury and try to beat that with a public defender.
How long before your or how long did you have to wait for that? What was that? So you say, "I don't know what you're talking about." Nobody else did either. Everybody.
That's why I don't mind talking about this stuff, because they was talking about it then.
Yeah.
No, everybody rolled, man. Everybody took their. They took me to solitary confinement, Yellow Brick Road in Rappahannock Regional Jail. It needs to be shut down. The first night I was there, I listened to a man till he no longer lived. He was detoxing from alcohol, and they thought it was a joke. They laughed at him while he died. But I went into that hole and I sat there, and I would hear the sounds, and all you could wait for is the tray slot to open up for a tray. That's it, or to get leashed up. They put you. For me, I was on 2-man escort the entire time I was in the system, and what that means is anywhere that I was moved in the jail or prisons, etc. Depending on my status, I had to have two officers with me escorting me. I had to be shackled at my ankles, my wrists, and leashed up from behind. And that's life. And one day I'm sitting in there, still trying to figure out what doing time is, because I haven't made out of solitary, and my tray slot opens up and they stick a tape recorder on there. And I'm like, and they press play, and it's just, they sound like a choir up there.
Wow.
Yeah, they had a remixed mixtape and everything.
Auto-tuned the confessions.
Yeah, and the main
Chris
one
drove.
Right. Chris drove. And the main one that was doing the talking, I would end up running back into him on a level 4 yard.
Get out.
Because DOC messed up.
Get out.
Yeah.
Now you said they messed up, do they try and keep?
All of them had me on their enemy list. The 19-year-old. And I want to tell y'all this, like, if you look at my pictures of when I was 19, I wasn't an angel, but yo, like, you can see where prison transformed me.
Yeah.
And I don't hide that, but yeah, man, that was it. Like, it was, the tables were turned. They're telling no plea. I'm finally in population in the jail. And this is it. Like, I've never done time before. I'm in like, and guys are in there okay with it. They're in there laughing. They're on the phone. They're cooking. You know, the breakfast trays come. I still hadn't been able to eat the food. It's like day 6. The milk smelled like vomit to me. You know, the food is, you know, and these guys were okay with it. And that was my first thought walking into that pod or whatever. Like, yo, they like laughing and stuff in here. Like, I didn't think that's what I thought everybody was gonna be miserable, depressed, and trying to get up out of here. But no, everybody was just, you know. So
And that's before. This is your time before your sentence.
So I was in a jail, all in all about 8 months from
Oh wow.
turning myself in to being sentenced. And once I got sentenced, I was down the road, and that's when I realized the difference between prison and jail. Jail's like community college.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's worse, especially in Georgia. Georgia's probably got the worst system out the 50, but back then jail's like country club. And I got good at jail. I learned how to manipulate in jail. I had a level of intelligence that I'm not gonna say other guys didn't, but I knew how to use what I had. I knew how to communicate. I knew how to relate to people. I could talk to the CO because he was a vet.
Yeah.
I learned a lot of the COs were vets, so I would lean on that. And, you know, I was using that environment, and I had a reputation in the jail. And then I got sent to prison, and it's no man's land. They don't care about your reputation. You're not from Virginia. You're from Chicago. You're 19.
Right.
Yeah, we're doing life sentences, you know. So, yeah.
But so when you said 8 months before your sentence, they call you back in and say this. They read. How did that go? What is that like? Where you're just like, this is.
Yeah.
Here
Did you have a trial, or did you?
It's great. This is how my advocacy career started. I was scheduled to go for my sentencing probably about a month later. And then one morning at like 5 a.m, they knock on my cell door, and the officer's like, "You got court." I'm like, "I'm not supposed to." I'm arguing. I'm like, "I don't have court right now." I'm showing them that they're like, "Nah, you got to go. You're gonna cuff up, go to court. If you don't have a hearing, then you're just gonna take the ride and come on back." I was like, "All right." I show up to the court, and my public defender, which I'm proud to say I helped get him disbarred later on, who often would show up smelling like liquor and his collar wrinkled and his tie loose, and again, things you don't really recognize when you're 19. He says to me, "Man, you got court today. That you got sentencing." I said, I don't have sentencing the next month." He said, "Well, I sent word to the jail. Nobody said nothing to you?" I said, "No. You're my lawyer. You're supposed to make sure I know
Right.
what's going on." And he says, "Well, they moved it up." He said, "And the best I can do is get you 35 to 54 years to do." I'm 19, so 35, that means I'm going to be 54 when I come home. If I can survive 35 years. And if I get the ladder 54, it's over with. Like, come on. Either way, that's life. And I did what a lot of 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds, whatever in that situation don't do. And I said, "Nah, not doing that." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, you got to figure out something to tell the prosecutor and the judge."
Oh my gosh.
That's what he says to me. And I looked at him. I said, "What you mean?" He's like, "Well, I'm going to walk off for 2 minutes. You figure out what you want me to tell him." Because he was upset that I didn't take what he offered at 35 to 54 years. And he came back in like 2 minutes. And by then, whatever form, you know, at the time, what I knew was prayer and whatever was going on in my head, I just came up with the thought that I need to get home before I'm 40. Because I was watching people going there and getting life sentences for one robbery. And I'm already like, what's the worst that can happen? They give me 35 anyways if I don't try to get less. So went out there. My mother got on the stand, spoke to my character. I got on the stand, spoke to my character, held myself accountable, apologized. Couldn't volunteer any information because they had already submitted all that. And not that I wanted to do, but that would have been my only way to get home, you know, earlier than what I was. But by the time it was over with, the judge said, "You're hereby sentenced to 144 years." That's the first thing I heard. and then you know that white noise with the high pitch.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I heard. And I looked back over my shoulder, and it was like everything was blurry, but my mom. Damn, I was like, it's over with. And yo, it's crazy because I work in the field now, and I talk to mothers that don't know. They have no idea. I talk to the mothers of sons that they never expected their son to be in that situation. Now they may not come home. So it moves me. But somehow my mother smiled at me in her way. She's got this subtle look. You know, she's just an easy person for the most part. And I turned back around, and my lawyer was kind of tapping me on my shoulder. He was like, you don't got 144 years. And when he kind of tapped me, that's when I started hearing again. And the judge was suspending stuff. And he suspended this, that. And by the time it was over, it was 144 years all suspended, but 19. So at 19 years old, for a 3-minute car ride, a BB gun, and a bad decision, I was given 19 years. But I always speak to the 144 because even right now, presently, I just received a proclamation from the city of South Fulton. I traveled the country. I opened the school. I still got 50 years over my head. If I walk to the corner store or gas station, somebody bumps into me, we get to tussling, it may not fare well for me.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the reality of the situation, and that's how I got sentenced, yeah.
And, you know, that's so interesting that you say that because it's not like it's over. Like what you just said, the magnitude of it is still there. People don't realize how
when I walk into prisons, that's one of my things. When I can ease the room, I say, yo, I'm still doing time too, because I'm still doing time. No matter how free I look, I still got a number over my head that says if I move too far this way or that, you know.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Just see. So you get to prison and 19, like you said, you left the country club and you get there. Here's a string of questions. You can just take this train of thought and run with it.
Mhm.
What's that first night like? What's the week, month? When did you find a rhythm? And tell me a little bit about that, about what prison was like for you. How long did it take you to get to where you're like, okay, I'm part of this thing now? Do you ever feel like there's a point where you have to stop looking over your shoulder constantly?
I got sent to Sussex 2 State Prison. It's a level 4 yard. It's closed now, thank God. You don't get used to prison. Not in the way that some people may think. Not if you believe in your freedom that you just deal with. My first day there, I walked over a body, an individual that got SA left in the stairwell. My third day there, I was jumped. I was assaulted by 5 people out of a certain city. By my 6th day there, I had signed a waiver to be placed back in that same unit because I had a decision to make after I got jumped. If I got transferred, I'd be listed as a snitch, even if I didn't say anything. And I made a decision to go back in the pod, and within the first 2 weeks, got to fighting all of them one by one, because that's how prison is. After I got jumped, brother of mine to this day, Jefferson Ellie, he's a 5%er. They weren't feeling that, you know, even though I was from out of state, and they made sure I didn't get jumped no more. And I don't know what it is about today, man. It's crazy.
You got it, babe.
Yeah, but my first like experiences in prison, man, I had an old timer, OG named Omar in Ducey, man. He was a good dude. Wasn't perfect, and if anybody looks it up, they'll probably say he wasn't a good man. But in prison, he had changed his life, you know. And he was somebody that was doing a life sentence, never going home, and that was my first cell partner. He made knives, he played chess, and he read books. That's
Yeah.
that's what he
Right, in
did.
that order.
And when we was in the cell, it was his cell, because that was his house. He told me, he said, "I'm never leaving here. You just stopping through." And some guys would be
Wow.
like, "Man, you let him punk you." No, I showed OG respect. But he educated me, schooled me, and he let me know, how to move in prison. Through the chaos, through being tested, because everybody gets tested on the yard. And he gave me that prison knowledge that I needed, unfortunately, you know. But I would say after about 90 days of chaos, I got good at prison. I started to get good at prison. I got into the kitchen. I was now, some people say it's a car, but I had homeboys in there now. And I was in bid mode, as they say. So, yeah.
Bid mode. How's your mother doing at this time? You there? And
Man, my mother had a nervous breakdown. Yeah. My mother had a nervous breakdown, and she had kind of bounced back. She bounced back, for the most part at the time. And she was trying to come visit, and I remember one day, because the family's impacted too, you know.
right.
And I remember one day I'm just looking at her in a visitation room, and I'm like, "You don't got to come no more." And she was like, "I can't." And I was like, "I understand." And at that point, I didn't see my mom for like 7 years. Yeah, I talked to her on the phone, you know, but those were my wishes. 'Cause
Yeah.
I mentally, I knew I had to lock into prison. Like I couldn't think about the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
Not in that situation.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I
please.
a question, or I was just thinking, when I think of prison, I mean, it terrifies me
Yeah.
to think about, because I've seen I've only seen movies and heard stories. So, were you? I mean, going in there, were you terrified? I mean, was that, or did you even think that way, or were you just like, I've got to survive, or?
I'm not just saying it just because I think it sounds, but I've never really been the type to be scared of, I don't know. I came up with my father, 4 uncles. They taught us, fight everything coming at you. So I joined for, the military. Like, it wasn't that. It was just, I was stuck. I think that was the feeling. It was the knowing. It wasn't, fear would do me no good in that. It not in a way, a healthy fear. Yeah, hey, maybe I shouldn't go yard today because that
Yeah.
reasonable fear. But I think all in all, it was just that feeling of dread, knowing that even if I made it through the day, I still got 11 more years, or I made it through the day, I still got that was the part. It's no daylight, and it's over and over again, and you're just trying to make it.
Wow. I wanted to ask about the portrayal that we see. You had mentioned that you had stepped over somebody who had been SA'd. The portrayal of things that we see. So just okay. Here's what I know from what TV says. You got to join a gang. You got to find protection. You got to pay for your protection. You've got to guard yourself against assault and things like that. So is that? I mean, you said level 4.
Level 4.
Is that what are the levels? And is that something that the media is getting right, or is it a level thing?
It's not like this. It's more a state or region.
Okay.
Where I was at now, you go out west, California, even all the way out here down south in Georgia, you're probably gonna definitely have to get in a car. Where I was at in the Commonwealth, politics weren't really that way. Like race wasn't a thing at all.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't uncommon to see black dudes, white dudes,
Mm.
But gangbanging came into prison in like 2004. That's when you started to see, certain gangs in that system. Before then, it was just like little neighborhood. That's how far, I don't want to use the word behind because maybe it's a good thing, but that's, I guess, how far behind VA was. So,
Okay.
but no, it varies. It's state to state. But I would say prison is an extremely hard place to be a lone wolf.
Yeah.
I did some things in there that I would not recommend. Like further on in my bid, I was an active gang member. I left the gang technically while I was on the inside. Like I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. But I was just it's different. I was just, when you're tired, you're tired. But yeah, politics are a very real thing. A lot of guys get involved with them, and that's a lot of time why guys get into worse situations because at that point you're relinquishing control to another,
right?
Already inside of a place where you have no control.
So was there a point where you decided to pursue like faith? Is that something? Let's talk about, because you see a lot of guys, like you said, there are people in there who change their lives, that it changes them, it impacts them, and people don't see that. People don't realize that someone goes in one way, and while they're there, can be, because that should be the goal, is to reform. But how did faith, or at what point did you really start to say, okay, I want to pursue this? And what's that like in prison?
For me as a young person, and probably like for a lot of young people, we don't know nothing. We're trying to figure out the world and who we are. And even though our parents are teaching us certain things, we still want to. And prison, for as a negative space it is, you can learn in there. You can reflect. You can work on yourself. You got the time to. And I grew up, my father, him being Catholic, initially going to like St. Matthew's, and then my mother being Baptist, going to some different types of churches. But never really having that like actual strong spiritual foundation in my house, but always knowing who God was, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And when I went to prison, like I mentioned, the 5%ers who are not Christians or Muslims or anything, those were the first ones that were like, oh, you're not going to jump yet. So I gravitated towards them because they were protecting me. They would make sure we at least fought fair. And they also taught me knowledge of self. I studied with them for years, and I learned about history and science and math, and they would have conversations that I wouldn't hear in the other parts of the prison. So I was exposed to guys that were in the pursuit of knowledge, even though they were on the inside. And they got money and, did the things that a young person would like to see, but that was that. And then I'm bored, or I'm hyper. I don't know what it is. Eventually I started studying with the Muslims. Prison. I want to learn. And my stepfather, rest in peace, he's Muslim, all these things, boom, boom. That didn't, fare well, with me, or I didn't stick to it. And then I got sent to solitary confinement along the term of my incarceration for this period of time of 14 months straight.
What?
Yeah, I did
solitary?
I've done over 3 years in solitary
Oh my God.
combined.
Yeah. What's that like? Let's take a side journey here. Because as far as I know, solitary confinement's like that closet behind you, but oh my gosh.
Solitary confinement consists of a 5x8, not a 6x9. And I'm not a tall guy, but I can reach out and touch both sides. You get a cement slab on the floor. You get a light that never turns off. You get your sink and your toilet, your metal thing that you guys probably seen all the videos or whatnot. You get a mirror you can't see out of. They take your mat 6 a.m. They don't bring it back till 6 p.m. And you can't have anything in there but one religious book of your choice and writing utensils, write letters, and hygiene. So I'm in solitary confinement this time, 14 months. I got my prayer rug with me down there. I'm making salat. And I was the best way I could say it, I was always chasing God, but this was the first time where it was like, oh, you about to sit. And one day I was reading the Quran, and it's not a knock, man. I got brothers that I love, but I gotta feel it, and I gotta respond to it, and it has to, nourish me. It doesn't have to nourish anybody. And this old timer who he was just a psychopath. But for this point, he just walks by and throws a Bible under my door. Like, as he's going back, he's just like, boom. He just like, because he hates Muslims. You need to read this freaking Bible. And I'm like, man, well, F you, I ain't da-da-da. The Bible sat there in the corner of the floor for like 2-3 days. I didn't touch it. CO's running my cell. I had some stuff in the Quran, some literature and some stuff that I shouldn't have had in there, communicating with the brothers on the yard. And they took my Quran, they took the prayer rug, they took everything but the Bible. And I sat there and I looked at that Bible for like 2-3 months after, sitting in the hole. And it's crazy. This guy's real. But I just picked it up one day and I ain't hear my voice when I was reading. It's like I heard my Aunt Sheila's voice. My Aunt Sheila, maybe it was just my mind probably just trying to like, but my Aunt Sheila was somebody that passed. She was somebody that prayed with me. And she's somebody when she was dying from cancer, I seen people call her for prayer and it left a mark on me. And I remember her just always telling me, she's like, if you don't know anything else, if you can't read anything else, just read Psalms, read Proverbs. She's like telling me like, not the basic, but
sure, giving you a foundation.
Yeah, read. And that's what I did. And I was a rapper and I did poetry and I got in Psalms. I was like, oh, this kind of like, okay. And that was it. I started reading. I ended up losing 55 pounds.
Jeez.
Came out the hole, emaciated, and they had this program at the time called Kairos. And Kairos was a Christian-run program. And the whole premise of it is you go, it's 3 days, you eat cookies all day. They pray with you, they play music, and they were like, you're going to go. Like, you lost 55 pounds. Like, that's over with. You're out the hole. I'm like, I'm not going. And then finally, I gave in because they brought me some cookies. And I was like, I get to eat these all day. Like, yeah, come on. And I went there, and I was still kind of like standoffish and angry, even though I was still reading the word. Like, I wanted to participate, but you got to understand, when you're a Muslim and you become a Christian in prison, that's not always a good look. And to be honest with you, in prison, a lot of time the Christians are known as the weak brothers.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And I remember being in there and trying to like not participate because I knew God now, but I didn't want everybody else to know, and this pastor had walked over to me, Pastor Jeff, and he just started telling me about myself. Like, just like going in on me. Like, oh, the reason you're angry, like, and he's listing stuff. I'm like, does this dude know my family or something? Like, how you know this stuff right here?
Wow.
And
you can grab that, man.
Can I grab it?
Yeah, for sure.
And and after he told me, about myself, started crying like I done did a couple times up here. I'm an emotional guy. But and that was it, man. Like, he hugged me, which, remember, I hadn't seen my mother in 7 years.
Yeah.
So I hadn't really had that type of connection, you know what I'm saying? And that was it. I just felt Christ in that moment. Like, I felt connection. That's what
awesome.
it was. I felt Christ in the whole. I felt connection when I came out.
Praise God, dude.
Yeah, in that way. And that was the start, man. I had that was the start of me not just spiritually developing, but growing up and maturing in that environment and saying to myself, like, I want to go home.
Yeah.
Let me break. I'm sweating like y'all got them lights right.
Can we adjust the air at all? Is there a way to do that? So what point of your bid was that? Was that early? Was that midway?
That was 2012, May 2012. So I would still have about 8 years left. So I was about halfway.
Okay.
Yeah, about the halfway point. And I had made my way off Sussex 2 a second time. I got sent there twice on this bid. when I was in there, and started to see things that I hadn't seen. I got sent to a prison where I could walk down the boulevard without being escorted. You know, they had programs, they had trades. Initially, where I was at, nobody went home. Like over 80% of the camp had life sentences.
Wow.
There were no opportunities. The camp they sent me to now, totally different. And they had a church. Church is a big thing in prison, even though I said a lot of times Christians were looked at a different way in there. Usually it's the biggest service in there, you know? And usually the reason we're looked at as weak is we're not trying to start no smoke.
Yeah.
You know? But I started to connect with brothers. Brother of mine is a mentor to me to this day, Freddie Williams. He's a pastor. He started in there out here. He's still got a powerful message. And he showed me an example of a Christian I could relate to. You know, he didn't cuss. He knows the Bible. Like, I never met nobody know, you know, but he was cool though. Like, he was patient with me. Like, he knew my background. He knew I was rough, you know, but he showed me Christ's love. He showed me that consistent connection, and he mentored me. And when it comes to the church in there, we run the services. You know, if people come from the outside, they're just guests. So at the time on the inside, he ran a church of about 300 people every Sunday night. And they were having some issues with some things going on at the service. And he knows I'm a little crazy a little bit. And he asked me, he said, I remember he tricked me. He said, I know you don't want to get involved with this church stuff, but come run the usher team for me, man. Let's just make sure the bathrooms, nobody's going up in there, because you got a backbone. And in prison, to be a part of a community, to have a title in there, and in a good title, it's a good thing. So now I'm over the ushers. Now I got the homies with me on the usher. I done got the young people, you know what I'm saying? Like, and we in the church. And then from there, he knew, they knew, I sing, I rap, you know, whatever. They were having problems with the choir. And he tricked me again. He was like, hey, man. And next thing I know, I was over the music ministry. And I would sit up under him and just watch for probably like 2 years and walk with him every day. This is my brother. And then one day they just called me. Like, you're gone. Pack it up. I was like, what? And when I say it's my brother, like, we're going to finish our time together. He like, that's like that. And he looked at me and said, well, that's your tickets punched. Just like that. And I got sent to this level 1 road camp. I was never supposed to be on a level 1. They told me I wasn't allowed. My jacket wouldn't permit that. And they sent me to this level 1 Camp 17. And first thing I do is look for the church on a Sunday. And I hear like music coming from the cafeteria. And I go and I look in there and it's 3 people, the whole church. And it's miserable. Like, it's just, I'm like, man. I was like, I miss where I was at St. Bride's with bruh and them. Church is jumping, you know. We got Saturday service, Sunday service, Wednesday Bible study. Here it was nothing. And I went in there, and it was not really a church service, more of like a share circle, because it's a number of people. And I started talking, and by the time I ended up talking, there were 10 people. And then one of the older guys that was there, he's like, you ever walked in here? When we've been in here, nobody. And they talked to me, and we had a conversation. And I told her I was like angry or agitated about it. And they were like, we want you to run a church service up here. And started running a church service. And cafeteria was packed, every seat.
Wow.
You know? And then the inside joke, it's funny, but it's not funny because it was God's work. They were so thrown off by the number of people that were in the church service inside of this prison, because it didn't exist, that they sent COs in there and snitches off the yard that would house there with us.
Right.
to investigate, to make sure I wasn't in there. Because my jacket, I got some gang stuff in there. Make sure I wasn't in there recruiting, or they really.
Oh, wow.
But what happened a lot of times, those same officers end up praying with us.
That's
They'd come to
awesome.
altar call, you know, and they got to experience Christ in a different way from inside the prison.
Praise God.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned talking to Miss April. So when did you guys
You want
meet?
to chime in on that?
No,
you been
go
over there,
ahead.
so you want
You on the road, babe. Go ahead.
and she just did an interview too. So in 2017, with that same brother I was mentioning, Freddie Williams, he came to me. He said he wanted to start a nonprofit called the Nehemiah Empowerment Project. And he's who also put the thought in my head about nonprofits, and I didn't know about stuff for real. And he wanted me to be the vice president. And to this day, this is a successful organization that it sometimes that I'm the vice president, the vice chair, because we're in different spaces now. But that was I guess the beginning of I don't know, just my organization, just working with people, just understanding. If I forgot, I zoned out. That's all.
And also, he was facilitating groups.
That's the part.
And workshops with different couples.
Thank you. And this is what she does on a regular basis. So
Okay.
from facilitating those programs, her friend came into the institution to see me, well, not see me, but come to a program, like a family reunification program. And she had married a brother of mine at the time. And she had heard me speak. And she ran back to her and said, hey, you need to holler at his homeboy or whatever.
And I declined.
She declined.
It was the year before. It was 2016 when that happened.
Yeah. And I want to say I declined too. I had just got out of a 6-year relationship. I was dating one of the prison staff, you know, for the long. Yeah.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's not allowed, is
Was
it?
that allowed? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No. That
Okay.
adds on to the
They
lore.
make documentaries about that.
Yeah.
It'll probably be in a documentary. And shout
wow.
out to her. She's still a friend to this day. But through this program, being connected, you know, her friend coming out, that was it. That was the initial way that we started interacting. About a year after we knew about each other, my homeboy called me to the phone, and I'm thinking I'm gonna be talking to his wife because he had to go get something from the locker, and that's what you do. Hey, hold the phone for me.
Right.
And it was her. And
I didn't know either.
well, her homegirl was like, "Oh, y'all should get to know each other for business." Da da da. And to this day, I always say that weren't no business call because the first thing she did, she said, "What's your name?" I said, "Life." That's what everybody, you know. That's what the name that I got over the years. She said, "No, what's your mother call you?" I said, "God Almighty."
Yeah.
I said, "I like that right there. Don't nobody talk to me like that, you know." And you know, 15-minute, 20-minute phone call. We had a good conversation or whatever. But the thing that left the mark on me was before the phone call ended, she asked if she could pray for me.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Aw.
I ain't had nobody do that. Not since my Aunt Sheila, my mother, you know. And that was it. I think the next day she had told me, she's like, "Well, you can write me," but the next day she sent me her phone number. And
That was not the next day.
She wrote-
A couple of weeks after.
Get this to Chris stat.
But yeah, we did end up emailing one another. I did reach out to him and I emailed him, and I wanted to keep in contact with him. And that did progress into phone conversations. That progressed into a very, very divine friendship. But it had to be built on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very, very sincere about that. I didn't want to just jump into any type of relationship. I was very clear about that. But I was so open to such a strong friendship. And I said, if you can be my best friend, you know, we don't know where this could go. And ultimately, that started our journey.
And I'm glad, yo. I'm not just saying it. She like,
yeah,
my best friend.
Yeah, it's my best friend.
We done been through. We got married in a prison visitation.
Yep.
They almost locked me up the day before.
Tried to ship them off
Oh wow.
We've been through
3
some
days
things.
before.
Yeah, we've been through some things, man.
So let me ask you, when you got into this relationship with someone that was in prison, What was it like? The people in your life, did they not like that, or how was that?
The first reaction, the first negative reaction actually came from my mother.
And rightfully
And
so.
right. But I too do have an incarceration type of background. My father is actually doing life in prison.
Wow.
Before he did life in prison or is doing life in prison, he was in and out of prison all my life. He got locked up when I was 4 years old. So I had been visiting prison since I was 5. So for me to jump into a situation like that, given family history, other people in my family who have been incarcerated, friends, family. I'm from Detroit. So I just had a very rough upbringing anyway. And to that point in my life, I was single. I was in school. I was saving up to buy a home. So I was very focused on myself. And my mom just couldn't believe how could I even, she was looking at it as this has got to be a distraction. And I was like, well, he ain't asking me for no money or nothing. So like I didn't really feel like it was a distraction. And honestly, the first time I actually tried to put money on Chris's books, he was like, don't put another dollar on my books. I'm a man. I have a job. I can take care of myself. If you want to put some money somewhere, just put it on the phone. So I was
Phone
like,
crazy.
bet.
I couldn't afford the phone.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was like, bet, I'm literally trying to save for a home. And at this process of me trying to save for a home, I'm not knowing that, this home is going to be the foundation, for my family. Because even with that, my own personal faith journey, I was like, Lord, how you going to bless me with a home and I ain't even got nothing to fill it with? I ain't got no man. I ain't got nothing. Like, I don't have anybody. But I just knew it was the fiscally responsible thing to do. So him being a part of that and building on our friendship, fast forward to us establishing this friendship and making it solid, I really, wanted to get past some of the layers, that I have seen in Chris. And that's what led us to me finding his biological parents. I noticed that Chris I felt like he had a void in his heart. There were certain things that he would say. And I was just like, man, I don't know if this is really, I did not know. I just knew that I was in his life and that he was my assignment in such a way. But I didn't know what it was going to turn into. I just knew to take it step by step and literally day by day. And as I was building on the outside, he was building himself on the inside. I was building myself up in the inside. I was having Bible studies to myself. God was keeping me too, but literally keeping me for him. I just didn't know it yet. But that was one of my personal prayers that were answered, like within the first 6 or 7 months of us knowing each other, was me connecting him to his biological family, because I just didn't know if I could be with somebody who didn't exactly know who he was. And that was my personal prayer. I said, well, Lord, he doesn't know who he is. He get mad. He talk about, I'm adopted. I don't want to hear that. This is just me talking to God and having those conversations. And I was like, I can't do it. Like, I know that I'm not going to be able to fill certain voids. And I was on a journey to being healed too, because I knew I had been hurting from some things. And that's why I was by myself at the time in my mid-30s, trying to find myself all over again. And I wanted the same for him. And so us being the same age, that's something that, we just kind of looked into. We would joke a lot about certain things, because I'm like looking at him and I'm like, well, I don't really know what he, culturally, like, what are you? You know what I mean? So we would, these are things we would joke about. And that morning we was like joking about it. But by that evening, I couldn't even talk to him because the phone lines were shut off at 11 o'clock.
She found my family in one day.
Literally one day. One day.
Crazy.
One day found his family. And that began a whole nother journey within itself. But I knew that I would not have to hear, because I'm adopted, anymore. I knew that I wouldn't have to hear, this is where I come from. No, now you know. Now you can start putting these pieces together. Now you can start healing yourself and taking the steps that's necessary to see who you are and where you come from and why this happened. I've often found myself having abandonment issues and neglect issues because of my father was incarcerated. when I was 4 years old. So that was something that I struggled with, and I internalized and dealt with my mom being a single mother, getting married 3 times, you know, having a last name of a person that I did not even know, my maiden name. He was a heroin addict that I've never met. So carrying that name, you know, going through life, my own personal battles, my own family history, battles and bouts with addiction, just a lot of the things and a lot of the trauma I know I didn't want to carry into my future, but I still knew that he was my friend enough that I knew it was something that, you know, we could still heal separately, but it was something that we can explore together. And I was strong enough to take that step. And that's why I always, you know, kind of stress to him, hey, we just gonna learn how to be the best of friends. If we could be the best of friends, we can do anything. And it started literally layer by layer. Literally layer by layer.
Awesome.
I
love that.
I love that. Yeah.
Now you guys are equally yoked, and you guys are.
It took work though.
It wasn't easy.
My first year coming home, first 2 years were dark, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been home 5.5, but I'm a CPS in mental health. I work in recovery. A lot of the fields I work in is because when I came home after 17 years of prison, we weren't guaranteed to make it because my mental was shot. You know, there's a video of me walking out of prison. She's laughing, my family. You know, I had family pick me up, and I look, I'm twitching in my face.
His eye used to jump.
I'm not smiling because I came, you know, through all those yards. There were situations where I was running yards. There were situations where I had to thank for all of my people, make sure we were good. So I was wired that. And I don't think if we were best friends, we would have made it, because she had to. I know there were certain moments without her saying she had to see like who I really was past the damage.
Sure.
You know, hey, I thought she was going to that. That's another podcast right there. Mental health
What a
after
great
prison.
woman. What an amazing life that you have. That's awesome.
One thing I want to say is, you know, our relationship literally started, I feel like, with a prayer.
Yeah.
You know, him allowing me to pray for him, us being able to pray together. No matter how many dark moments we've experienced, God has always been in the midst.
Yeah.
You know, we always studied and meditated on the word. There were times while he was in prison, we was fasting together.
Oh.
You know, he's the only person I probably fasted with in the last 8 years. So, you know, we had a lot of breakthrough moments, and I know that God was in the midst. I know that, you know, he lined it all up. Like, I know it was him. And the life that we live even now is
he's definitely still in the mix.
Still in the mix. You know, it's all
That's
about
crazy.
purpose. It's all about helping people. It's all about just growing together and allowing the people around us, you know, to see that growth, and us being able to literally edify the kingdom, bring our gifts to life, and just continue that cycle so we can help more people out. You know, a lot of people don't have examples of what it looks like, you know, from somebody incarcerated to now.
Right.
We didn't have a lot of examples. We have some, but we didn't have a lot of great ones. And for us to be able to be that vulnerable, for Chris to be able to take these risks, for him to take these leaps of faith, you know, it wasn't easy for him, and it wasn't easy for me to see him go through all of this.
I had severe social anxiety.
Very.
And now I everyone. It was a process.
Being in the prison system, do you think that, because I know it was based to be a place for rehabilitation.
Was
do
it?
you think it is? I mean,
No, not at all.
okay.
Yeah. Slavery still exists. Prison is a form of, you know, that in legal way. It's not necessarily it still is very much about race, but it's also about class. It's not uncommon to walk into an Alabama field and see white and black men standing side by side, picking with no money to go in their pocket at the end of the day. I don't think for 1 second prison is about rehabilitation. When you look at Georgia Department of Corrections, where we're at, we lead right now in homicides in the history of Department of Corrections, and we're only in May. So They're building super prisons. They just passed a budget for a $436 million
Supermax.
prison
In Georgia?
in Georgia. We have an 88-acre cop city. It's already proven that change does not come through corrections. Change comes through connection. So reentry, what they do is they wait. I'm in prison for 17 years. I had a different path because I was working in reentry when I had 6 years left as a mentor. So my path was different. But a lot of my brothers, they're sitting in a prison pod or a cell for 10 plus years. And then when they got 6 months left, they're in this reentry program. And it's a joke. And I run around and I tell every prison I can, when I can, we got to do better. Reentry should start from the second an individual is incarcerated.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And the thought is that I often run into, if anybody's watching this and you're like, I don't care, guys locked up, they should be locked up. It's never going to happen to my family. Over 70% of individuals that are locked up are coming home to a community near you.
Right.
So you should want that individual
Yes.
rehabilitated, whether you like them, you want to see whatever. You should want your community safe.
Agree.
Yeah. So
Agree.
it's not happening, man. We're fighting for it.
Tell us about the Life Unit. That's your ministry, and just the birth of that, and what it just, the heart of it.
Yeah. The Life Unit it's the opposite of death. I was given a nickname Life from my brother Jefferson Ellie that I mentioned while I was on the inside. He's still fighting for his freedom. We got over 180,000 signatures in support of his release. Got some time knocked off. He's still sitting in there for 11 more years. But he's the first individual in my life that taught me the environment does not control me. It does not dictate me. It's what I'm doing on the inside of myself that'll determine where I go.
Good.
So the Life Unit is paying homage to my brother. It's also, we're in a place where the world is very turbulent now. My organization goes into the places where death is. We don't go for the easy missions. A lot of people do, and that's okay because everybody's not equipped. Everybody doesn't want those weights. So, but we all my team, we psychopaths. You know, a lot of my facilitators, ironically, a lot of my brothers that was in VA ended up in Atlanta with me, which is crazy. Brothers that I mentored on the inside, brothers that are now facilitating, you know, doing what they doing out here. But we focus on prevention. We do that different ways. We do a bunch of community efforts, and we got July 19th, both sides of the gun. We partnered with the director of violence interruption and mayor of Atlanta. We got an event June 7th coming up talking about trauma and triggers. We got a fest. We're starting a fest this year. We getting a fest. Y'all ain't never. We starting a family fest. In August, and yeah, man, we just working. Life Unit is also focused on reentry, where we basically bring curriculums to people that need it, and we do that by connecting to already existing programs or through the digital space. That looks like coping skills, effective communication, financial literacy, emotional intelligence, the things that we need so we don't go to prison or go back. So that's it. And then the intervention piece, which we're big on, I kind of spoke to that. It's family intervention, it's youth intervention, it's gang intervention, it's 2 a.m. intervention. That's how we roll. We're really about that work. Yeah. And we got honored recently. June 23rd is Life Unit Day for the city of South Fulton. We received a proclamation.
Oh, that's great.
It's Christopher Willars / Life Unit, but I told them just make that Life Unit Day, because it's a team effort, you know, and everybody's rocking, and we're excited. We're getting ready to launch a digital learning channel. We got 10,000 members in our group, you know. That's great. And we're growing everywhere else, yeah.
And don't forget about the recovery piece. We are active in recovery.
Yeah, so the recovery piece it's always going to be inadvertently tied to the Life Unit. I'm a CPSMH. Recently just given the opportunity to work out of 2 jails where I get to go in there and find and identify what they call frequent flyers, individuals that are coming back and forth to jail because they got mental health issues or addiction issues. So I get to go into these spaces, find them, and get them the resources so they don't come back to incarceration. Yeah, my team, we connect the dots. We partnered with Believe Detox Center all the way in California. They're a great team, and we get people to detox. We got support groups every weekend. We facilitate with speak dads and freaking everything. We working. It really is a nonstop 24/7. I thank God for it, because I was sitting in the cell, and now every day I get to wake up and it's like, choose your mission. And I
Right.
get to help people along the way.
That's awesome. And also your content online. We'll link that. You've got some great
That was
stuff.
on that. Yeah, that was on accident.
It's interesting because I know that and I sent you the list or the questions. It's funny how so much of comedy, not to say that what you do is comedy, but some of it is funny.
Yeah,
but
sure.
comedy is based on reality, a person's past, and what you do is somebody may be laughing at that, but I was watching it one day, I'm like, this is a view into it. I may be entertained by this, but so we'll put all of Chris's socials in the description. You can say them right now if you want, but definitely check them out because it's funny.
I'll just say, man, check me out on any social media platform. Christopher Life Willars. Last month, just between 2 platforms, I haven't looked at the other 2. We reached over 110 million people.
That's awesome.
I do funny content because we got to tell the stories, and I'm a storyteller above anything else. But I'm also up there giving job tips to returning citizens.
Right.
I'm giving mental health tips. I'm constantly every single day posting my number on social media, saying text me if you need to get connected to a detox. So just anybody, if you see me, man, I will say the difference between me and a lot of the prison talkers, and I say that out loud and I get in trouble with a lot of them sometimes. I don't really care. I'm not exploiting prison. I'm not glamorizing it. I'm not glorifying it. Every single piece of my content is placed to create conversation, educate, and hopefully keep a person from going or going back. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Chris, April, thank you guys
Yes,
so
thank you
much
so
for that
much.
just journey. Please go comment. Leave a comment. So I'm learning that helps the algorithm. I'm seeing some stuff.
For sure.
Repost this just for the sake of, for hope, for people to know that love is possible,
Yes.
that there is a future, that God loves you. He sees you wherever you are. He is
Wherever you
never
are.
outside of a situation. He's there waiting for you just to, like you said, pick up that word and then just let it work in you. Guys, we're going to go ahead and end it there, but thank you guys so much for joining us today. Please go and follow the Life Unit on every social media platform that they have. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you for having
Amazing
us. Thank
platform.
you.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you guys. We love you guys. Be blessed.
Bye, guys.
Bless. Peace.
I'm having conversations. I'm having conversations. I'm having conversations of faith.